see.
So we don't have Counselor Brown or Counselor Gwynn?
No, not that I see. Nope. But I think they accepted the invitation.
So Mayor, I will go ahead and just sign in, and then if they show, I will then remove myself from the meeting itself and just be present as the alternate. I think you said thank you. I'm not sure. You're
Yes,
mute.
I did. Thank you. I'm
You're
just going to
welcome.
shoot Deanna a quick text and see if she remembers.
Already did, Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Well, let's get rolling then. Call this meeting to order of the Legislative Committee for the City of Salem for August 24th, 2026. And I'm Julie Hoy, the mayor.
Councilor Nordyke, Ward 7.
Counselor Nishioka as alternate, and unless others, other counselors come in.
Great. Thank you. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Let's get right into it. Action items, City of Salem funding priorities. Who's got this one?
I can go ahead and jump in here. Good morning, everyone. Frances Ferris. So just very quickly, just wanted to do a recap from the last meeting because I know we discussed a number of different items, including some of the state funding requests. And I believe we had a limited number of priorities that we settled on. That included the Capital District, the WVCC, and the buildable land inventory requests. We just wanted to flag for you that after that committee meeting, we had some discussions among staff, specifically related to the WVCC request, because we noticed that some of those ongoing discussions have been leading to potentially looking at a state building as a site for the new WVCC location, and that means that some of that initial design costs will probably be lower than we initially thought. We are keeping the ask at 2.5 million, but we are including this new aspect of the ask to be equipment funding or equipment outfitting. So with that, just wanted to flag that for you, that that's the only real minor change to the capital funding priorities that we wanted to flag. And then in addition to that, the Capital District campaign materials are available in the agenda packet for your review and consideration. I see Councilor Nordyke has her questions up, or her hand up.
Yes, I did. I was curious. Can you say what state building is, excuse me, that you're interested in for WVCC?
That's a great question. I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't know if Brian is in this meeting.
You can always get back to us later.
I am. This is Ryan Zink, Business Administration Manager for WVCC. I think at this point we're not naming the building. There is an existing tenant, and so we just want to be conscientious about talking too much about the location at this point. But at some point, that location, I believe, will be named.
Is it too soon to make a joke about a non-disclosure agreement? Checking in. Sorry. Go ahead.
I laughed, so it was a good joke. Okay. So with that, we just wanted to bring it back to the table to make sure we were still in alignment with those three. And if so, we could bring those forward to the council for their approval.
Anyone have any question about that or other direction?
Mayor, I do have another question. At what council meeting does staff want to bring the funding priorities to council? Is that a September, October? I'm just kind of curious, when do you plan on bringing that to the full council?
I think we were thinking the next meeting, so September 14th, but defer to my higher ups, a higher power on whether we want to put it on that agenda.
I don't know to whom you're referring, but I'll just jump in and say that the next possible opportunity for us to bring it forward to council would be September 14th, and that would be our intent to bring it forward at that next meeting. So again, this would be any of the legislative committee's actions today would be available to the full council on the 14th. Thank you.
Well, the reason I mention that is I recall our mayor and I pointing out in a prior meeting that we didn't see Peace Plaza beautification as a high priority. Am I remembering that correct, Mayor? And I don't have an alternative request in its place, but to me, I want to do everything to support our affordable housing shortage. So I reached out to Director Utes at Salem Housing Authority to see if she had any suggestions for any items that might fall within this category. And I have not heard back from her because I didn't give her a whole lot of advance notice. But to me, this is the priority that I think weighs on our residents' minds a lot more than Peace Plaza. And I would, love to circle back to Director Utes, see if she and her staff have anything in mind that would be suitable for this list. If not, then maybe we just continue with the funding priorities as is. But I wanted to give this committee a heads up that I have initiated that conversation with her and would love to see if they have anything in mind. And of course, I also told the director reaching out to Courtney and coordinating with our other legislative related staff. But to me, I think our residents are much more interested in getting more affordable housing in our area, to be perfectly candid. I just don't see it as a high priority for our residents.
Councillor Nordick, if I may, Jessica Blakely serves for Salem Housing Authority on this liaison group. And what I would suggest is that we could advance the short list of priorities to council for now and come back with some other housing priority for the committee's review at your next meeting, if that's acceptable. That way we can do both things, take the time to get a proposal put together that might meet Salem Housing Authority's need if there is a discrete need, and also be able to start advocating on behalf of the city for those other three priorities.
Sounds great to me. Thank you, Courtney.
That does sound great to me too. I also wonder about the Peace Plaza work. Knowing that you all will be going back into the Civic Center, does that have anything to do with those improvements? Or is that just strictly looking at the artwork, or does it have parameters, or is it a general consideration?
I wonder, Francis, if you could give us an update. I don't think Peace Plaza is still on the list for this coming session. Could you give us an update?
No, so that from my understanding, we've narrowed it down to those three, right? The VCC, Capital District, and the buildable lands inventory. But for the Peace Plaza, I understand it's just a beautification of that specific area, not necessarily beyond that.
Thanks for the clarification. Sounds great. Yeah, Linda, go ahead.
Yes, Courtney and I are on the Civic Center refurbishing, I guess, or retrofitting. And Peace Plaza was supposed to get a fairly healthy chunk of money while that was going on. But unfortunately, things have accelerated in costs, and so there's minimal. I'm hoping to see that we can find some ways to support just the replanting of trees and just the basic infrastructure. I believe, Courtney, isn't this part of trying to help support this ask?
So again, I think the direction from the committee at the last meeting was to focus on three discrete priorities, and Peace Plaza is not currently on that priority list. What I believe is that yes, there is I think about $100,000 allocated to support Peace Plaza investments in the bond program for the Civic Center project. And in order to make the best and highest use of that resource of the bond funds, there was a broader visioning, outreach, and engagement about what Peace Plaza could be if it was better serving the community. And so that vision has, I think I heard someone say, it might have been you, Councilor Nishioka, has a vision for a much more greened and more active environment. And so we are confident that the $100,000 investment from the bond program will not, and helps to advance that broader vision and will not have to be undone later. So we're trying to do all of that at the same time. So for right now, we have a great community involved vision, and we'll advance that as we can when funding becomes available. Excuse me.
Thank you for the recap.
Thanks so much. Lots of clarity going on. It's probably good if we're able to just move on to the next topic, the League of Oregon Cities policy priorities.
Yes. Okay. So this agenda item comes from the LOC having published their 2027-2028 legislative priorities. They've included at least 27, I believe, identified priorities, but we narrowed it down to about 6. They're requesting that each city submits their top 5 priorities before September 25. So we're bringing this forward to the committee now so that we can have some discussion on which of the priorities you would like to see submitted, and then moved on to council approval before September 25. So the priorities that we've identified are funding and coordination for shelter and homelessness response, full funding and streamlining for housing production, land availability and land use streamlining, 2027 transportation package, infrastructure funding, and strengthening economic and workforce development. And all of these align with city priorities, including our legislative statements that we recently approved through council as well. So
Francis, excuse me for interrupting. Could you just go through those one at a
Sure.
time?
Yep. Sorry. Going through really quickly. Okay, so the first one is related to shelter and homelessness response. And this essentially means that the LOC will support state shelter system funding and continued state investments in a comprehensive homelessness response system to fund eviction prevention, shelter, and rehousing. And that aligns with our policy statement on housing and homelessness. The second one is also related to housing. It's full funding and streamlining for housing production. This means that the LOC will support opportunities to address structural barriers to production of different housing options, like accurate tracking of units produced, streamlining state agency programs that impact development, and so on. That's the second one. The third one is related to land availability and land use streaming. This supports updates and streamlining statutes to better improve land use planning and land availability for all needs, like refining land use statutes for clarity and streamlining UGB expansion and swap processes. That connects directly to one of our state funding priorities, the buildable land inventory. The next one is the 2027 transportation package that supports Oregon's multi-jurisdictional, multimodal, and safety-oriented transportation system. The fifth one is related to infrastructure funding that supports increase and sustain investments in drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, and water reuse infrastructure needed to support housing production, economic development, public health, and environmental protection. And the last one is related to strengthening economic and workforce development, which means that the LOC will support efforts to modernize and strengthen Oregon's existing economic development programs like the Enterprise Zone, Strategic Investment Program, the Brownfield Program, while advocating for local flexibility.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about that? Councilor Nordyke.
Yes, I do. In looking at the strengthening economic and workforce development, the background information speaks only at a very high level, 10,000-foot view. And it talks about enterprise zones without really going into a level of detail that I'm curious to know more about. We've seen enterprise zones provide a lot of great incentives and bring a lot of great businesses to Oregon. On the other hand, I think enterprise zones right now are under a lot of critique statewide for the tax exemptions that they provided to certain entities without a clear return on investment in terms of a lot of high paying jobs or a lot of jobs of any nature. So I'm not sure, without knowing more about what exactly they have in mind by supporting incentive programs like enterprise zones, whether that's something that we want to be on board with without going into that level of detail. I don't know if any staff are able to answer in greater detail what the LOC means by supporting economic development, because their own materials don't really go into the level of detail I'm seeking right now.
We will not be able to provide any greater detail. These are the materials that the league has provided us for the council to consider and weigh in on. So we, as Frances in the memo, she's provided 6 options of things that we felt were most likely aligned to council and community conversation, and your other priority statements. So if you want, we have to get to 5. So if you want, we could drop that one and go with the first 5 on the list. But that again would be at your direction, council.
I'd love to see what my peers think. That would be amenable to me, but I'd love to hear what my other committee members think about this.
Well, I'm always interested in economic and workforce development and would be curious if the detail you're looking for, if the league can provide it. So I'd be happy to reach out and ask that question if that would be helpful. Or
do we have time, Frances, to meet the league's deadline? Because the option is that an option available to Salem is that we do not respond to the survey. That's fine also. But do we have time based on their deadline? I can't remember.
So I know we have to submit by September 25. And if we submit this to council, so if we approve today 5 and we submit to council, that would be the 14th next meeting. But if we wanted to get some clarification on this particular one, I think our next meeting is for the 18th. For the legislative committee, is for the 18th. We would not have enough time to send it back to council for approval.
I'm interested in including it. I'm not in need of the detail that Councillor Nordyke is. If there are specific questions you wanted answered, you could send those. I mean, we could send those now if you wanted to. But I think I think those 6 priorities kind of round out a lot of interest areas. Did you have something, Justin? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to do my raise hand here. I would defer to Jessica, but it seems like we've got 3 bullets all dealing with housing, land use, community development. Maybe we sub-bullet under there and submit our 5. Keep them all housed under our 5, but keep all 6, but that would get us under the 5 that we would submit. That makes sense. I
think that sounds wise. Is there a recommendation you'd make for where to sub?
I just want to make sure Jessica's okay with that since she's dealing with all that stuff.
I see a thumbs up from Jessica.
Justin, what would that look like? Which would you sub?
I don't know. Just in looking at those top 3 bullets, it's like, okay, we might just put it under a housing. We might just say, okay, this is what we're looking at in terms of housing. Boom, we've got shelter and homelessness, we've got production, and we've got, land use under that one umbrella. And again, Jessica, let me know if that works or not, because they are so distinct. Yet for the purposes of communication with the league, maybe we just include those all in one heading.
Yeah, and I know Eunice is also doing work in the land use space, so there might also be, depending on which bucket makes more sense, there could be for her, but I think it all ties to the same work. So I leave it to the group. I defer to the group. Eunice, do you have any thoughts?
I agree with you.
Beautiful. So we just need someone to word it right. Francis, is that you?
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to take a stab to try to get those three under one umbrella. I haven't been through this process before, so I'm not certain on whether we'll have to choose individually every single priority. So if we were to be in the position to have to choose 5 out of these 6, maybe there's one that we would want to that we would be okay with letting go, essentially, for the 3 that fall under housing. I would propose maybe the land availability and land use streaming one, just because I think we're already pursuing that through our legislative asks for the state funding priorities through the buildable land inventory piece.
Councilor Nishioka, I haven't heard from you. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Have to unmute myself. Yes, as I'm seeing it, I do appreciate Justin's suggestion, and I could see where land availability and land use could be a subcontext under full funding, streamlining, housing production. And if that's something that we feel like we could move forward with, it seems like that could maybe be the sub bullet point. And then it would technically give us 5. But again, it sounds like Eunice and Jessica sort of agree with that, but didn't give us direction. So I'm just saying land availability and land use would be a subcategory of full funding and streamlining.
And Madam Mayor, I mean, let's also keep focused too. This is an internal document for the league, who is a collaborative partner. Great. We want to make sure that we're giving them input, but it's not truly our goals and objectives.
Thanks for the context, Justin. That's helpful. I say, let's make the 6 5 and feel really good about ourselves.
Great.
Awesome. So if that's everything on that, let's move on to our federal update. Terry.
Yes. Hello, everybody. As you may be aware, and Justin mentioned, I think before we officially started, we are in the midst of a congressional recess at this time, in the middle of a bit of a stalled negotiations between the House, the Senate, and the White House. And we're only, what did you say, Justin, 78 days from an election? I have stopped.
Might be less than that. It might be 70.
Yeah, I've stopped keeping track, but House and Senate members are very, very focused on those issues of the election at the moment. But at any rate, things are moving forward, but very slowly. As far as priorities for Salem, we have several projects that are contained, as you know, in the appropriation bills that are stuck but moving. At the moment, where things stand is that both the House and the Senate have advanced bills that would extend funding for the current year through mid-December and do some other things. This would certainly advance our projects in a manner, and that they just are preserved, but they are not funded or made into law at this time. This is what is happening with all projects that are in for the whole country. It's not just yours. And so they will be looking when they get back in, the House is coming back in about a week, and then the Senate's coming, then they're leaving again, and the Senate's coming back in about 3 weeks. But what they are going to do is negotiate out this longer term extension through December, and then they're probably going to leave town fairly quickly for the election to campaign. I would expect them that once the campaign is over and we know who the winners and losers are, that they're going to come back to town. They're going to determine who has the power next year and how they want to move forward. it is currently looking likely that the Democrats will take at least the House and that the Senate appears to be a bit of a toss-up. But either way, that would extend a lot more leverage to Democrats, in which case Republicans will want to and be very motivated to wrap up these bills this year because they won't have as much leverage next year. So that said, I think that we will likely see our projects be funded and become part of the law in December, which is a good thing. Other than that, it's extremely quiet back here. They're just not around and they're all focused other places.
Justin, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now that I know how to do this raise hand, you're going to get tired of that little hand coming up. Anyway, Terry, I don't want to put you on the spot, but a couple things that are coming up here in my conversations with electeds in talking about funding are we're going to have to wait and see what happens with fire dollars and fire suppression. So first question, and this is just an overall general question for you, Terry. Are you hearing any talk? Is this administration still kind of hesitant to put dollars into the Pacific Northwest? Are we going to face some of those troubles? That's one. So in FEMA and how that shakes out. And then two, are you hearing anything on elections, right? I'm getting worried. Oregon, we're kind of unique since we're 100% vote by mail, but talking about sending troops or ICE or any of that, what are you hearing on the national level that could impact us out here?
Sure. So, I'll just take them in order. So on the fire dollars, it is not just Pacific Northwest burning. It's also red states like Utah, purple state like Nevada. There's a lot of problems throughout the whole West right now with fires. And so I suspect that the administration may be less inclined because they just don't seem to like to spend these kind of dollars. But Congress is certainly paying attention. We have a different project completely unrelated with a House member from Utah, and they are just, it's not fire related, our project, but they are consumed with the fires and just all consumed. And this is a Republican office. I would not be surprised if there is significant pressure from rank and file to insert fire dollars as emergency funding into the appropriations extender bill that will pass sometime in early September. I don't know how fast you all need those dollars, but I think that's probably the quickest that they will come. And I do think while there hasn't been a lot of formal talk because they're just not here, I have been hearing a lot of people saying that the fires are huge problems, that they really need to address them. So there's that. And then on the election stuff, it is really wild and up in the air that so many things continue to be pushed by the administration and by some members of the House and Senate to change the way that we're going to vote this year in less than 3 months. It's hard to imagine how any locality could really function if there was a significant change to the way that elections were run at this point. The president continues to push for the SAVE Act, which would require picture ID. I suppose that would, and the current version of the SAVE Act, I don't know if it eliminates the mail-in voting or just restricts it heavily. I did see that the post office was barred from enforcing the executive order the president put out that would have forced them to somehow separate and not deliver ballots, which seems quite cumbersome and challenging. I don't know how they would manage that. But a lot of things that just seem really difficult that are being pushed that I think that you see, at least in the Senate, there is a sense that it just is impossible. You just cannot do this sort of major reform to the way America votes days before an election. There just isn't the capacity to do this, especially when you recognize that elections are run largely on the county level throughout the country. It's really not 50 states administering them. There's hundreds of counties, and they would all have to reinvent their systems very, very quickly. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Senate will block anything from happening there, but I expect it's going to continue to be something they're going to talk about.
Thank you for that. And again, the relevance here, Madam Mayor and councilors, is because I am hearing this kind of questions come up when we've met with the co-chairs. So.
And the other thing that might be pertinent to what you all are concerned about in Salem is that I suspect that Salem will be very hesitant to move forward on a lot of surface transportation type funding for roads, bridges, and transit. Anything that they might be working on next session until there's a bill in DC that would reauthorize those programs and reauthorize the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. I do not see that happening this year. There is language in the extension bills that would extend that through mid-December as well. However, no one seriously believes that they have a real chance at getting success there and finding a way forward by mid-December. So we all think that this is going to be kicked into next year, which may cause some difficulty for states in trying to figure out how to fund their own programs.
Anyone have any questions? No? Well, thank you for that. And Terry, is that everything from you then?
Yeah, that's everything from DC.
Great. Thanks so much. Justin, go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Madam Mayor, councilors. Thanks, Terry, for the segue. I'll make up some time for us here. Looking at the 2026 interim calendar, we know we've got a revenue forecast coming up here, August 26th. That's very important for us in terms of our budget process and looking at what the state's going to have available. We've got interim legislative days between September 8th and 10th, so folks will be back in town. We've got a pre-session request deadline on September 11th. We've got our general election on November 3rd. We then get another revenue forecast on the 18th. And in between that time, what we often see is the Senate and the House then deciding who their leadership is going to be for the upcoming legislative session. I'm not hearing a lot of information there. I would imagine the Senate president will remain the same. If anything does change, it's probably in the House. But again, we will see. This is probably going to be, as you guys have heard me say, politically, probably more of the same, right? Pretty big majorities in both sides, both the Senate and the House. We have pre-session legislative council drafts being returned by December 1st. We have another round of legislative days from December 1st through December 3rd. And then we've got another pre-session filing deadline, December 11th. As everybody knows, those dates are there. That doesn't mean we can't go get legislation. That doesn't mean we can't go to a legislator and get a priority bill. They have more than enough bills. And as you guys remember going through our last full legislative cycle, there's no shortage of legislation. So we will continue to see that. In terms of meetings, we've been having some good meetings. I had a great meeting with Senator Patterson on Friday, talking through our priorities, talking through some of our expectations, and that we'd be meeting today. All of that was met with a warm reception. So it's not like we're asking for anything that's too difficult. They know some of our asks are difficult, but very willing and wanting to help. So good meeting with Patterson. And then I met a couple weeks ago with Mannix, Representative Mannix in his office. As you guys know, even though Representative Mannix is in the minority party within Salem, his longevity and his relationships and his knowledge of our city and our community, he has performed very well being in a minority party within such a within a supermajority legislature. So he had all kinds of ideas. I think we all know Representative Mannix, very pragmatic, and out loud thinker, which I really appreciate. And he's looking forward to helping us really get at some of those funding issues. So I'm encouraged by that. In terms of looking at the 2027 session and what we've been learning with our friends at the league and other folks talking about city issues, you guys have all seen the Ethics Commission stuff. We've all been through it. There's probably going to be some legal interpretations, challenges. There isn't a lot of collaboration there, and we all know the relationship between the league and the Ethics Commission is not good. Transportation, obviously, that's why I'm asking Terry some of these questions. We really we really need that transportation package done. I think everybody here, including Terry and in their work in Newburgh Dundee, Summit's work in Newburgh Dundee, and our work over the past, we're 10 years out on a transportation package. So that really needs to happen. They didn't get it done last session. We can expect data centers are going to come up again. And then finally, resiliency and Cascadia planning, right? I think the legislature really needs to take a look. And there is a strategy, there is a statewide strategy that's been commissioned by the governor. And so we'll keep an eye on that going into the legislative cycle. As Terry mentioned, it's election time. So we are out and about, we being your representatives, out and about, meeting with candidates, meeting with incumbents, handing off some goodwill along the way, and again, just messaging what our priorities are going to be going into the next legislative session. So with that, Madam Mayor, that is my update.
Thank you. Any thoughts or questions about any of that? No. Seeing none, we move on to the Capital District campaign materials.
Yes. Okay. So this is a follow-up from our earlier conversation about the state funding priorities. The primary one being the Capital District, the creation of a Capital District for public safety services. We have a couple of items that we attach in the agenda packet. So the first one is the longer format of that, which includes the history, context of the issue. It includes some examples of what we could have the legislator come up as creative solutions. So we looked at other capital cities that have similar pilot type of programs. We looked at some that had tiered levels to these pilot programs, depending on the state-owned way that they use that property. We also had another program that was just a blanket, 10 million that they provide Trenton, New Jersey for what they call the Capital City Aid. And then I believe the other one, I had it in front of me, but the other one is I'm blanking. But there's a couple of other examples on that long format there. And then the second piece is looking specifically at some of the direct impacts that the Salem Fire and Police departments have on state-owned buildings, public safety. And we try to put that all together into a one-pager that's beautiful infographic that our fantastic Victor here in the city put together for us. And really the message that we're trying to send is that we want this to be a shared responsibility between the city and state in providing for these public safety services to state-owned buildings. It can't just be a burden that falls onto Salem residents. Yeah, and we should create something that helps both of us, essentially. With that, I think our next steps here are to kind of understand where the engagement could be with some of these Oregon legislators. So as we heard from Justin, there's interest and warm reception in terms of some of the funding priorities that the city is coming with for this legislative session. And as city staff and as our lobbyists can do, we are happy to facilitate a lot of those conversations with legislators when you bring up the city funding priorities. So we just wanted to provide this for folks in upcoming meetings. Yep. Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you. I'm just trying to make sure I'm following through. I think that this begins on page 28. Or do you know? I'm just, again, trying to make sure I'm able to follow the information sent.
I see 21. Is that right, Francis?
Yeah, I think it would be 2021, Counselor.
Okay, 21. So that's
page
that's
21.
That wasn't part of the league. It looked like the league was a whole bunch.
Scroll down a little further.
Yep.
It's right after that league packet.
Yes, so that looked like it was page 28. I'm just trying to make sure I'm following along.
Yes, that's correct. I think on the PDF itself, it says page 21, but in the whole mass of all of the
Okay.
documents, it's page 28. Yes.
Okay, great.
that.
Thank you. Because that was the 21 was still part of the league stuff. So thank you for that clarity. I'll just continue listening.
And Francis, can I say real quick, just to follow up, this is great. I've been able to use this. I didn't hand it off yet, but I've been able to use this with both Mannix and Patterson in those meetings, encouraging them to help us with legislation. So they both offered to do that, which is great. And it'd be nice to have both of them together along with the rest of the delegation. But the question I often get, and I'm sure Terry gets this at the federal level as well, is what are other states doing? Why does Oregon need this? So to be able to say, hey, look at what Dover does, look at what Trenton does. Well, you know, we don't have Albany here as an example, but we can say, look at Olympia, look at it. This happens in other states and it needs to happen here. And that's really great. So I love having that. And I love having, it really just not only says other states do this, but it also generates ideas on how could Oregon get creative or how could we do this? And again, as I mentioned, Mannix meetings, you know, he's got 28 ideas. And Patterson had a couple ideas as well. So I'm really encouraged by this. And this is the kind of document that we can utilize to all be on the same page with messaging and really start to generate ideas with our partners in the legislature.
I wonder too, sorry
Oh,
to interrupt.
sorry.
Justin, I think in terms of next steps, what we've done here is provided or delivered to the committee what the campaign materials that we were asked to prepare. And I think what we're interested in doing next, Francis, could you talk a little bit more about that? Because we would like to help coordinate all of the in-person briefings with the legislators and are looking forward to filling your dance cards. And I think if you want to just, Francis, talk
Sure.
about what's next, because while the materials are finished, the strategy is just getting underway.
So yes, our fantastic lobbyists, Nicole and Justin, have been working behind the scenes in terms of trying to find, you know, times for setting up meetings, so that we could talk about some of these city funding priorities, and in particular, the Capital District ask. So essentially, next steps, I think, once council has approved this material, we can follow up with committee members individually to discuss, you know, future engagement opportunities. So setting up those meetings, what do you want in terms of talking points, you know, sharing this one pager. And we also have another fantastic infographic that's a bit more picture heavy than text heavy, but yeah, just sharing these materials and being able to facilitate that is essentially what we hope to do next.
Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to echo Justin's words of support. This is fantastic. I feel that this takes a deeper dive into the subject that I've not seen before in my time on legislative committee. So I think when you finally have the staff to do the work and do the deep dive, this is just one of the many reasons why funding our city manager's office makes so much sense. I think that I'm really excited at the kinds of options here because to me, it's one thing to just ask for money. It's another thing to give them a blueprint. And you know, like it never occurred to me ask for you know, a minimum level of reimbursement, or maybe a tiered system that considers payment for the tax losses based on property usage. I think we've had some conversations about reimbursement. We've even suggested sending the state a bill every time our police and fire dispatch to a big protest. But this is where I'm actually seeing some real concrete methods of how we actually do it. So I was really excited to see ORS 276054 and ORS 276250. I mean, this feels to me like we have more standing, more legitimacy to begin with in making these asks, and that they were contemplated and just never fully realized. So I'm encouraged by this. You know, I also found it was, while I'm just sort of responding in real time, I was very curious to see what the Dover City Council is doing. I personally would not support a fee of $1 per square foot for any tax exempt property bigger than 50,000 square feet, because I wouldn't want that to impact Willamette University. We may have some houses of worship that would fall subject to that, and I wouldn't be supportive of that. But perhaps there are other impact fees we could consider that specifically that are specifically intended to work with the state properties, not the many other tax exempt properties that are within Salem city limits. So I think this is wonderful. I would love to see more ideas developed and giving our legislators some options for how we actually demonstrate just how expensive it is to play host to all of the legislators, all the staff, all of the state employees, everyone who comes to exercise their First Amendment rights in our fair city. They should come and protest. They should come and talk to legislators. I am fully in support of that, but it's just not free. So I'm really excited about this. Great work.
Okay, well, I will just jump on board and say, yes, this is exactly the kind of thing we need, I think, to context to better tell the story and sell the ask. So, Justin, right? We talked about this, right? Okay, it's good stuff, Francis. Very well done. All right, where are we at? I got all deep into the agenda packet. We are Data Center Advisory Committee update.
Yes. Okay. So we provided a brief primer on some of the work that has been going on at the Oregon Data Center Advisory Committee. The last update that we have from them is that on August 4th, they had a meeting to discuss preliminary issues that they could potentially include in as part of their recommended actions in their final report to the governor. They discussed items like land use, local authority and capacity, water and energy, community benefits, incentives and revenues, air quality and backup power, and data transparency. So a lot of different things in the span of 6 hours in one day. So they have been holding a lot of different listening sessions and meetings since the beginning of this year, but are now winding down into that space where they can actually have recommended actions to provide to the governor. So I think the next step here is essentially for us to see what they come up with. And hopefully that'll help us in our own process as well as the city goes through the moratorium and the zoning code changes. But we want to just provide that to the committee members for any discussion.
Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you, Mayor. I asked our legislative committee staff to put this on our agenda. I feel that this is a very timely opportunity for this committee to start familiarizing itself with statewide research, potential legislative action, and other potential changes in reaction to the sheer volume of data centers that have already come to the state of Oregon and the many more who are considering coming to Oregon. Francis, I'm wondering if you know, when they developed these preliminary findings, did they reach, I mean, who did they talk to come up with these findings? Did they talk to any of the cities? I'm just kind of curious my first question really is more about their methodology. You know, who did they listen to in reaching these preliminary findings?
So I'm not a huge expert on this committee, but my understanding is that they, throughout the different listening sessions that they've held throughout this year, they've had experts in all of these different areas come and present on these aspects of, you know, siting a data center in Oregon. And they've also held public listening sessions. So they've listened directly from residents all over Oregon just to hear what exactly are the concerns. So they've been listening to a diverse group of stakeholders, I think, all throughout this process, and we'll hold another public listening session in September, I believe September 23rd, once the preliminary report is out.
Great. My next question is, first of all, I'm looking at the bullet pointed items. It's the page 34 of the packet itself, total counted pages. Thank you for giving us this summary. I'm really struck by the fact that so many of the items they've identified here are exactly the sort of concerns that residents have expressed to us. Water usage, energy usage, do we have the infrastructure to do it? One of the things that I've learned as I've learned about the data center process is one of the things I've identified here, that we don't currently have the specialized expertise needed to evaluate large scale projects like this. We've never had a data center in Salem. This is virgin territory for us. So I think a lot of cities are going to need that kind of support. We're the second biggest. We have amazing staff. We have a lot of expertise. I'm thinking of all the much smaller city councils out there that don't have a Brian Martin. They don't have a huge public works department. They don't have the kind of staffing to really respond to the kind of specialized subject matter experts you need. So I thought that was intriguing. Another thing I noticed that really stuck out at me, the transparency. We had so many residents express concern over the non-disclosure agreement. So I'm really proud of this council for unanimously supporting Councilor Varney's motion to explore whether and how we use NDAs when it comes to data centers. But one of the last sentences you included here under the data transparency bullet point, it says, including a method for verifying developer provided data. We've already heard a lot of conflicting information over how much water usage data centers actually use. So I was really glad to see that in their report. And, everything on this list, I think, are really important points that we do need to look into further. And the cities need help here. This isn't something that we're equipped to handle on our own. And so I'm really excited to see that these are here. I'm looking forward to additional information coming from them. One other question I have I want to circle back to water usage. We declared a state of emergency over our water supply last year. Did this advisory committee explore what municipalities should do when they're already in a water crisis, whether it's an official drought, whether they've declared a state of emergency over water? But I'm mindful of the fact that 30 out of 36 Oregon counties right now are experiencing some form of drought. And that means that in the past, where it made sense to approve land use applications without any regard to their water usage, does it make sense moving forward to have land use laws that give people a blank slate for using as much water as they wish without taking into account the real-time data and information we have about water availability? I'm just wondering, did they discuss what we do in those situations?
I'm sorry. I would just refer you to the web link that is in the beginning of the primer. Staff have tried to just summarize at a really high level this active committee's work. They began in February of this year, and each of their meetings has been discreetly focused on one subject area. They have presentation materials, they have the recordings, they also have all of the public testimony that has been received, and presentations from a bunch of different communities, and it's particularly on water. And then I was also going to note one thing. I think there are also some research materials, it looks like, from the staff at the Oregon Department of Energy, who has been assigned this work by the governor. So all our intent was really just to make the committee aware that this group has been meeting and does, as Francis noted, have another listening session before they wrap up their recommendations to the governor in October. So we are really fortunate, to your point, I think, to have this active group investigating all of these areas of impact in greater detail, and we're going to be benefiting from their labor, especially as we advance our own task force on data centers.
Fair enough. Thank you so much, Courtney. I'll look forward to reading up those materials. Sounds like a little bit of light reading or not so light reading in my future.
One other thing, Mayor, if I can, Courtney, talking about other coalition partners and collaborators, is the Council of Governments, and to Councilor Nordeg's question, what other cities are doing. Has the Council of Governments started doing any kind of research or tracking, or are they putting together any primers for the cities that fall within that council? I don't know. I haven't heard.
I don't know either, but I think their primary responsibility is to the governor's request for all of this information. And I'm sure there will be more. Certainly, maybe Justin, I think you mentioned too that, in your crystal ball, you're imagining some more work at this session on data centers. So this is likely going to be a stepping point towards additional legislation in this session. I want to notice and be aware of the time. We're slightly over. And Francis, do you want to just introduce the other topics that are on the agenda? We can return to them when
Yep.
we come back at the next
Sure.
meeting.
Yes. So for the last couple of agenda items, we had a memo to the Legislative Committee on a possible city position on energy security that would sort of encapsulate all of the nuclear energy discussion. We did have a counselor who is on the Energy and Environment Policy Committee request to put this on the Legislative Committee agenda because they wanted to know if the city could come up with a position on a nuclear feasibility bill that could potentially come up during the next session. So we essentially put this memo together with some of the background on this possible bill and a proposed city position that more broadly looks at energy security as opposed to just focusing on nuclear energy. So we can talk about that during the next legislative committee session, but I wanted to share that with you now. And then we also had two letters from the city that we wanted to share just for your awareness that some folks may have gotten email requests to meet with a representative from the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks earlier this year. And we wanted to share that with you in case you wanted to know some talking points and where the city stood on that issue. And then the other one was related to middle housing draft rules and how the city is essentially asking for or sharing concerns that the Oregon House Program draft rules are essentially creating a third path that would bypass local zoning process. So we're essentially asking for more local control over that process. Yeah, just sharing that for your awareness. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for all of that. Great work. I thank you also, Courtney, for being sensitive to the time. I do have a noon meeting that I'm a little bit late for right now. But is there anything else that we need to touch on before we adjourn? No?
Madam Mayor, I would just urge this committee to stay on top of data center legislative concepts as they start rolling out because they have the potential to impact the city and our residents. And I'm sure our staff and our lobbyists will be doing so.
All
I would
right.
can I just add quickly there that the federal government may end up doing something with data centers. It has become a hot topic amongst races throughout the country, specifically in Texas. That it's become a very hot topic, and I don't know what they're going to do, but it's definitely possible.
Thanks for that, Terry. Linda, Councilor Nishioka, did you have something?
A quick suggestion, we might want to extend legislative meetings for more than an hour because we oftentimes run short. It's a lot to discuss, and as we come into the full session, I think we may need additional time. So just a suggestion that we look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing nothing. Great job. Thank you, everyone.